What is good cinematography? I've noticed that a lot of YouTube analysts and reviewers, including myself, at times will praise the cinematography when talking about a particular film, but will just label it as good or great without really going into the details of what made it great. Which is usually okay to do if it's just a general review rather than an analysis, but after getting a consistent request from one of my subscribers, Dionysus, God, I hope that I pronounced that right, I decided to make a video that attempts to break down what I would consider to be good cinematography. Just know that if you want a more professional, educational breakdown of the subject from somebody who has more knowledge and experience than I do that will probably label and describe things in a more academic way, then I suggest buying a masterclass from a cinematographer or director or something. But if you want a decent, quality, free ride analysis on what makes cinematography good and how to achieve a cinematic look, I'm hoping to deliver that to you right here, right now. So for starters, anything and everything I say here aren't universal laws that can't be broken. These are just general ideas and standards. In the art world, essentially every rule can be broken and still be effective. Context is everything, and it all depends on what the artist is going for. If their approach ends up breaking a bunch of conventions but it merges well with their thematic, narrative, or aesthetic vision, then they found their own way to make cinematography good within their own context and merit. But in this video, I'm not going to waste time talking about the 180-degree rule or the rule of thirds or anything like that, because there are tons of videos on that already, and I just want to talk about it in a more conceptual way that's easy for everybody to understand. So naturally, it's difficult to talk about good cinematography without bringing in all of the other aspects of filmmaking, such as the lighting, the use of color grading, the direction, the production design, color in general, because all of those aspects can really elevate a shot to a whole new level and really helps make it stand out a whole lot more. But I'm not going to talk about those things until the last segment of this video. For the majority of this video, I'm going to do my best to just strip away all of those things and just discuss the bare bones and fundamentals. So first, we're just going to discuss how to make a shot aesthetically pleasing to the eye. And the first obvious thing I have to talk about in regards to this is the framing. Because framing is the very essential foundation to what I would consider to be good cinematography. If one doesn't have the knowledge or ability to properly frame a shot, it will be damn near impossible to achieve a decent looking shot. The main goal that you would want to have when it comes to framing a shot is for the shot to pop out at you. Something that really draws your attention with the image alone. So how do you do that? Well, for example, let's take a look at this shot from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. This is what I would consider to be a beautifully framed shot. It truly looks like it could be a painting on its own. And that is one of the many goals one should have when pursuing cinematography, is trying to make every shot look like a painting. Obviously, the lighting and color palette elevates it to that level, but even with the framing alone, it really catches your eye. But why and how does it look like that? So it has what's called dimensionality to it. What do I mean by that? Well, it really just means that the frame utilizes the extension of space to its fullest potential, to where the image doesn't look flat and one-dimensional. So when you compare a shot like this to this dumpster fire of a shot from Twilight Breaking Dawn, notice how nothing about this shot screams dimensionality and looks completely flat. One of the main reasons that is because it doesn't explore the space at all. Every object is just standing on the same dimensional plane, which restricts the image from creating the illusion that is popping out at you. When looking back at this shot from The Shining, it contains what the art world likes to call the use of diagonals. Notice how there are objects within the frame that extend from the corners of the frame that are closer to the lens as it beams across the shot and goes deeper into the space in a diagonal fashion. That, in this context, draws attention towards the subject, which is a miserable Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance. The use of diagonals is a technique and strategy that has been used throughout art history and is always an effective way to achieve dimensionality in an image. Another technique to achieve good cinematic framing is a bit more obvious. It's symmetry. Everybody should already know what symmetry is, so I really won't waste time explaining it. But besides the use of diagonals, symmetry is a technique that can really make a shot pop and appear cinematic. Wes Anderson is a filmmaker I always go to when discussing symmetry. All of his films that I've seen utilize symmetry in some way, but particularly with his film The Grand Budapest Hotel. Basically, every single shot in that film is symmetrical. Every single one. And it's one of the reasons why I also consider it to be one of the most delicate and beautifully shot films I've ever seen. But to give an example from a different director, here's a shot from Nicholas Winding Refn's Only God Forgives that utilizes both symmetry and diagonals that adds a double layer of dimensionality to the image. When you separate the image in half, they are identical to each other, and the framing of the lights in the room explores and emphasizes the space through the use of diagonals. And again, of course, the lighting and the use of color here elevate the shot to a whole new level, and whether somebody loves or hates Only God Forgives, it's impossible to deny that the cinematography in this film is aesthetically stunning. But there are other ways that are also related to symmetry and diagonals that can make an image really pop and stand out. This shot from Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a wide shot that is perfectly framed from each border of the frame. Adele Haenel's character is right in the center of the frame because she is the subject, but notice the location of structures and objects within this frame. If you remove all the rock and mountain structures from the image, you would just get the character in the center with just an ocean beyond her, which I guess is still effective in a way, but filling up the frame with structures and objects in a purposeful and delicate way can really elevate the aesthetic quality of the image like we see here. It kind of uses diagonals in a way that doesn't necessarily give it a flashy type of dimensionality, but it uses the rocks and boulders from the top left of the frame as it cascades down to the center to draw attention straight to its subject. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a perfect example of a film where nearly every shot of the film looks like a professional painting. Especially this shot here. Let's look at this iconic shot from Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon. This to me is a shot that looks so identical to a painting that if you show somebody this shot without context, they would have a really difficult time deciding whether or not this is a painting or a cinematic shot. But for this shot in particular, every technical aspect of filmmaking is used to make it stand out like it does. Not only is it framed perfectly from border to border like a painting would be, but the mise-en-scène, which is just a fancy word to describe the arrangement and placement of objects within a frame, is what also brings the shot to life. Kind of like the Portrait of a Lady on Fire, it kind of has the diagonal cascading effect, and the placement of particular objects such as the tipped over chair and the countless empty alcoholic beverages all over the place, combined with the slouched posture of the characters, signifying the current emotional and mental state of the main character. If you were to show the shot to somebody without any context, they'd be able to interpret it as a person who has given up on the royal image and is going through a lifeless downward spiral of depression. And of course, the natural lighting used here and the way that it reflects off the objects and characters in the room elevates the aesthetic quality of the shot as well. But so far, everything I've said can also just be solely applied to photography. Now I want to talk about what I would consider to be an effective moving image. I've been hesitating to talk about this aspect of cinematography because it has a lot to also do with direction. The director gets the final say on how they want the camera to move and what type of angle they want, but we had to talk about it because it is an essential part of what makes good cinematography. So again, we have to start with framing. If you have a long tracking shot take, it's essential to make sure that throughout the entire shot, the image maintains proper framing. The goal is to make sure that throughout the take, you could pause the image and still contain dimensionality or some element that allows the image to pop and stand out. For example, let's take this tracking shot from Terry Gilliam's Brazil. This is what I would consider to be an excellent tracking shot, because it contains everything that we've discussed in this video throughout the entire shot. The framing maintains dimensionality through the use of diagonals, and by having objects come in and out of the frame through closer perspectives that again draw attention to the subjects in the center here. And notice I did say subjects, because what makes a shot even more admirable is that there are multiple subjects that come and go throughout the shot. We followed this subject here for a while, but then he goes away and then a different subject swoops in here in center frame as we follow him until he eventually leaves. And the entire shot continues this pattern until we reach the end of it, where we stop at this shot, which again is an eye-popping shot due to its symmetrical framing and also utilizing diagonals that emphasizes the space presented. But there is another way to emphasize dimensionality in a moving image. One of them is to have objects or structures in the background of your subject that help exaggerate movement. For instance, let's go back to a shot from Twilight because it's just an ideal location to look for dumpster fire camera work. So here we get a rotating pan type shot with the subject in the center, but to me this comes off extremely flat because of the background being completely empty and colorless. There's nothing eye-popping or engaging about this moving image, but if we take a similar shot like this from Moonlight, Look at how much more engaging and dimensional this shot is compared to the one from Twilight. It's because there is attention to detail in the background that adds a contrasting layer and again exaggerates movement and creates a more captivating shot. Now, let's talk about something that is arguably one of the most important things beyond just making a shot look pretty and cinematic. Something that is really important when it comes to cinematography is always trying to have some sort of intention behind each shot. You of course want to frame the shot properly and have it look aesthetically pleasing to the eye, but always think of the purpose behind a shot. You always want to have some sort of atmospheric, narrative, or symbolic purpose behind each shot. Let's take this shot from the original Blade Runner. The camera is positioned at a lower point and angled upward at the villain character of the film. This is done to emphasize a power dynamic between the characters in this particular context. In this moment of the film, the apparent villain has the upper hand and has the power to decide whether or not his victim can live or die. So this angle is often used to symbolically represent a character or object that has power over another character, object, or situation. The angle exaggerates the size of the character that makes him appear more godly and having full control. But let's also go back to the shot in Portrait of a Lady on Fire. We already discussed why this is an aesthetically stunning shot, but to me, this also has a symbolic meaning as well. This is at a point in the story where this character feels alone and helpless due to outside forces she cannot control. I interpreted this shot to represent and reflect how this character is feeling, with her looking rather small in the center while being engulfed by the gigantic natural surroundings, which makes her appear helpless and insignificant. And of course, this is interpretive and not every wide shot like this will have the same intention and meaning. It will always depend on the film's current context, whether it's regarding the story, character, theme, or everything in between. And now I'm going to finally talk about the use of lighting and color in a shot. I again was kind of hesitant to talk about this because not only do I feel like this is more of the next step after learning about framing and angles, but also because this is something that can be highly influenced by the director of a film. It just depends on how much agreed upon freedom that the director of photography is granted for a given project. But yes, the lighting and the use of color in a shot is also an incredibly important aspect of cinematography that can transcend your shot into excellence. But again, you want to not only make sure your use of lighting and color is to make a shot look aesthetically pleasing, but to also have purpose and intention behind your choices. Lighting and color are the essential tools to enhance and express the mood and symbolic nature of a scene or character. So let's look at an example, which is the runway scene in Nicholas Winding Refn's The Neon Demon. I have a tendency to use this scene as an example when talking about the significance of lighting and color in filmmaking. It's not really what I would call a subtle use of it, but it actually makes it to where it serves as a great example to demonstrate how color and lighting can be used to elevate a scene. So with the runway scene, color and lighting is used in every regard. It's used to emphasize a mood and feeling, while also serving as a symbolic reflection of the main character. The scene begins with her walking down the runway in blue lighting. Blue, in terms of mood and atmosphere, is a more calming and relaxing color. In terms of character context, it represents her as a cool and innocent person. When she reaches the end of the runway, where all of the spotlight and attention is on her, the lighting changes from blue to red as her facial expression turns from hesitant and scared to seductive and arrogant. The red lighting in terms of atmosphere is supposed to immerse you into an alarming and sinister mood. In terms of character symbolism, it represents a huge change in her personality and identity. This is where she transitions from being a humble, polite person into a more narcissistic, self-centered person. The lighting and the color had a huge part in emphasizing and dramatizing this thematic conveyance. It's more than likely that this lighting and color decision was made by Refn the director rather than the cinematographer, or more formally known as the director of photography. So this is probably a better example of good direction than cinematography, but I would still say that if you're a cinematographer, it'd be smart to have a general understanding of what colors can represent. And for one last example that has to do with just a pure choice of lighting that isn't necessarily about color, let's look at a more popular and recent example from the Netflix film The Platform. The main character in The Platform has been referred to as some sort of savior or messiah multiple times throughout the film. Through his actions and through what he has been labeled, the film is trying to portray him as a selfless, virtuous character. So when we get this shot of him all beaten up and starved on the platform with a beam of light shining down on him like this, the lighting is symbolically depicting him as a Christ-like figure that is descending down from some sort of heavenly gate that has made a self-sacrifice for the betterment of others. Just through the lighting alone, it's emphasizing the main character's allegorical significance here. And this to me is where the use of lighting creates an excellent cinematic shot. So in conclusion, what makes a film have good cinematography is all about framing, lighting, color, and artistic intention behind all those aspects. Framing in the sense that it contains dimensionality by utilizing techniques such as diagonals and symmetry that explores and emphasizes space and allows a shot to pop and stand out. Lighting and color in the sense that it makes a shot aesthetically visible and pleasing to the eye, and of course the intention behind all of those aspects, meaning that there is an artistic and thematic reason for choosing to frame, light, and colorize a shot in a certain way that is relevant to the film's context. Now again, this is just a quick fundamental guide when it comes to the subject of cinematography. I'm certain there are plenty of other things that I didn't touch on in this video that you would get out of a masterclass or different videos on YouTube that may go more in depth, but to me, these are the fundamentals of what I would consider to be good cinematography. I hope everybody watching was able to get something out of this. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about cinematography and found it insightful, please don't forget to give this video a like and share it around to other Kino Lords, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more content like this.